When we talk about nightmares, you think of Freddy. You think of Jason. You think of witches and ghouls and goblins. You think of Michael Jackson, potentially. You think of Art the Clown. I don't know who that is. The Western Conference is a nightmare. Predicting it is a nightmare. 1 through 15, no easy team to pencil in. No team where it's like, oh, they're easy. They're this, they're this, they're this. All of these teams are difficult in their own way. There's some really fucking good basketball teams here. And what's crazy is we talked about the East yesterday. The Wizards look horrible. The Nets will be terrible. The Pistons will probably be terrible. Even the bad teams out West, I don't think are that bad. We'll get into it. Like the Blazers, the Jazz, they're not terrible. Shams Charania, Doug McDermott has signed a 1-year deal with the Kings. Oh, shit. It's my turn now. Breaking news, Doug McDermott has signed a 1-year deal with the Sacramento Kings. Sources told Slightly Biased Sports Network. McDermott is a career 41% three-point shooter. That's what they did all that for? Just yesterday they were telling me that the Kings were doing that so they could get Brandon Ingram. Western Conference standings by slight. This is what I'm going by now. Here's my last year predictions versus the results. Got Trailblazers last, correct? Got Spurs 13th, correct? Good job. Utah Jazz 13th. Got that pretty close. All good. Obviously, the way the West was, there had to be a team that had a nightmare season to finish outside of the play-in tournament. There was 11 or 12 teams that were going to be competing for the play-in. I thought it could be the Pelicans. It ended up being the Grizzlies. You just had to take a risk, really, to try and figure that out. Had the Rockets at 11th. I'll pat myself on the back there. I was high on the Rockets last year. I thought they had a chance to compete for a play-in spot, and they were. Had the Kings finishing 10th. They finished 9th. I was low on the Kings, and I feel like that paid off. Clippers, I was low on them. They ended up being good, much better than usual, but impossible to bet on. Yeah, there's some bad ones up top. OKC, obviously, them being the 1 seed, nobody could have seen coming last year, but, it is what it is. Grizzlies at 7, season from hell. Not going to beat myself up too much about that. Mavs 6 seed. There was some bias involved there. I'll pat myself on the back for putting them not only 6, but putting them in a playoff spot, a top 6 seed, because I was looking back at this. They had the 11th best odds in the West last year. Vegas thought that they were going to be a play-in team again. So I'll pat myself on the back there. Timberwolves were good. Suns were a little bit disappointing last year, but I'll give myself a little pat on the back here because I was a little bit lower on them. Vegas had them as the second best team in the West, so I was a little bit lower on them. Warriors, this one was a fuck up. I don't know what I was thinking here. Would have to go back and rewatch to see what the hell I was thinking about. Not only the Warriors being 3, but the Lakers being 2. Big market bias is at it again, baby. Big market bias. And I thought the Nuggets would repeat as the 1 seed, and they were the 2 seed, although they were competing for the 1 seed all season long. So not as bad as the East. The East was a huge fuck up. In what is a very difficult conference to predict, I thought I did pretty well, all things considered, a season ago. So it's going to be hard again, obviously. Nothing in this conference is guaranteed. There's going to be some teams that you basically have to talk yourself into being bad. Again, I actually will say 13 teams competing for a play-in spot because I do think the Spurs, although spoiler alert, I don't think they'll get there. But I think if you ask them, they want to compete for that this year. It's going to be difficult. Let's start with dead last. I am going with the Portland Trailblazers finishing 15th in the conference this year. It's just somebody has to lose. Somebody has to lose games. And it sucks for Portland that they're in this conference. Obviously, they're rebuilding, so for them it's not that big of a deal. But the Wizards, who I had finishing 15th in the East, are like so much shittier than this team. So much shittier. This Trailblazers team does have a semblance of an exciting young core, right? Shane Sharp is an exciting player. Scoot Henderson showed flashes last 13 games of the season, 19 points per game, 8 assists per game, 42% from the field, 39% from three. Showed some interesting flashes that lead you to be hopeful for this team moving forward, right? Anthony Simons missed a lot of time last year, only 46 games a season ago. He's still young. We've seen flashes from him. They go out and get Denny Avdia. I like that. DeAndre Ayton. Fuck it. Why not? Klingon is going to be a really interesting rookie to watch. Toumani Camara. What can he develop in his offensive game? He's a great defender. We already know that. Chris Murray. What can he show? Anything? Probably not, to be honest with you. I'm not that high on Chris Murray. They have Rob Will. Like, this is a pretty exciting young team. Delano Banton, who I played in 2K. I played Banton in 2K this year. It was interesting because he had his face scan. I was like, that guy looks like identical to Delano Banton. And it actually was him. He had the little thing above his name, and he was horrible. I mean, he was absolutely terrible at 2K. He had the little cold thing under his icon the entire game. So I don't know what exactly was going on there. Does that affect my ranking of them? Maybe a little bit. Maybe subconsciously. So their over-under is set at 20.5 wins, which I think is harsh because I actually think they're a better team than that. But somebody's just going to have to be the punching bag in this conference. 20.5 is so low that I penciled them in for 18 wins and still being low. So it's interesting because, again, I don't think they're a horrendous team. But somebody's going to have to be losing a lot of games. And around the trade deadline, could see Ayton on a new team, could see Rob Will on a new team, could see Jeremy Grant on a new team, Dybul on a new team maybe. Like, all of these guys could be on the move. So somebody has to finish last. I do think the Jazz will be here at 14th. Now, it is interesting. The Jazz have looked pretty good this preseason. A lot of Jazz beat reporters that I follow are like, hey, this team's going to have to, like, try to tank, which they have done each of the last two seasons. We've seen them hover around 500 around the trade deadline. We've seen them hover around the play-in tournament until they just finally decide we want to tank. Get us out of this. I think the Jazz will have to make that effort sooner because their roster is pretty talented. I actually thought about them finishing higher than this. Them owing OKC a protected 1-10 pick as part of the Derek Favors salary dump is lingering here. And I look around the league. I look at some of the other really bad teams in the league. There's definitely a world where the Jazz fuck around and give the Thunder the 11th pick. Like, that is absolutely something that could happen, which would be so stupid. I don't really know what this team is doing. They need to commit. I don't think they have any young pieces that are good enough for them to build a franchise around and really, really go and compete. Like, Larry Markkinen to me is a great number 2 or 3. Keontae George, I love, right? I love Keontae George. I think he's really good. Don't know if he'll ever develop into a number 1. Cody Williams has looked really good so far. I will give him that in the preseason. So keep an eye on him. That brother thing. If one brother's really good, it feels like the other brother's at least somewhat decent. Now, that's not always the case, but you do have the Antetokounmpo situation. But that feels like an exception to the rule. This is a good team. And I felt confident about their under. 27.5 is their over-under. I put it in as a lock. I'm not feeling too good about that anymore. I'm not feeling like too great about that being a lock. But this feels like this is a stacked draft class. If we can land a top-end draft, a top-end guy in the lottery next year, a Cooper Flagg, or whoever else it may be. I haven't really looked into the draft that much, but I know it's loaded. Whoever else it may be, that could be it for us. That could be our ticket forward. They just have to get there. So there might be hardcore tanking. But they've got a good roster, and Hardy is an incredible coach. So we'll see. I don't feel good about having them here. Next, I do have the Spurs. They're under 35.5 wins. Under is an easy lock to me. I don't see them getting to that point. I had them at 31 wins is what I penciled in. I try to look at their roster and just kind of in my brain think about what their win total could be, and I put that in before I even look at the over-under. So I'd struggle to see them getting to 35 wins. That would be a 13 win improvement from a season ago. And I don't think they're ready for that just yet. I think 35 wins would have them real in pretty strong competition all year long for a play-in spot. I don't know if I can get there just yet. Just yet. They're hard because of what Wemby looked like when Trey Jones was on the floor. We've talked about it before, but when Wemby and Trey Jones are on the court together, they are +5 in 1,200 minutes. Like that's a lot of minutes. And for a bad basketball team last year, a team that won 22 games, to have any combination for that stretch of time to be not only just a positive net rating, but +5 is crazy. And they were -15 when Wemby was on the court without Trey Jones. So just having Chris Paul is going to help out tremendously. But I think Chris Paul just helps unlock Wemby more than anything else. I'm not sure Chris Paul is really bringing much to the table outside of that. Devin Vassell, he's already out until November. He's somebody who misses time all the time. Harrison Barnes, there was a funny clip going around of their preseason game last night where Wemby just had a wide open lob and Harrison Barnes didn't throw it and Wemby looked really pissed off. You know, Harrison Barnes at this point in time is just whatever. I don't think he changes much. Just a nice veteran presence to have in the locker room maybe, but on the court not really changing much. I like Castle. I'm bought in on Castle. He looks very interesting. Definitely a Rookie of the Year dark horse, somebody not a lot of people are talking about, despite the fact that he was a top 4 pick. But I don't know. Partha, $9.99. Ainge digs in his ass for 3 straight years waiting for a Paul George package for Holland Porter Jr., about to serve up OKC a second 25 lottery pick, and I'm supposed to think he's some master GM. They need to commit to losing. The whole, like, we're going to take out the bottom half of the season. We're going to bottom out. Just do 1 year where you're bottoming out, and then you're good. Like, if you were to get a Cooper Flag, if Utah were to get a Cooper Flag, you're locked and loaded and ready to go. You are. You've done a good job everywhere else on your roster. You're locked and loaded. So let's buy in. Okay? Is he a bad teammate? Wemby? No, I don't think Wemby's a bad teammate. I just think he's very competitive. I wanted to talk myself into this team winning 40 games and making the play-in just because I do enjoy Wembanyama. I am of the belief, I am in the camp that he is that guy, and he's going to be that guy moving forward. But it might not be this year. And that's okay, though. That's completely and totally fine. That is completely and totally fine. Has Pop lost control of the locker room? Hey, man, a lot of people are saying it. All right, here's where things get really difficult. How do we figure out the rest? Like these 3 teams, I think everybody will have in their bottom 3 in the conference. Moving forward, every team that we talk about not only hopes to be in the play-in tournament, but wants to be in the play-in tournament. And that does include the Clippers, who I do not have at 12. This is where I'm going with the Pelicans. I predicted the Pelicans would finish 12th. Last year, outside of the play-in tournament, they were fine. I don't see it. And if I had to do a vibes check for every team in the NBA, they feel maybe the lowest to me entering the season. The Pelicans do. They did win 49 games last year. Zion played 70 games last year and looked awesome. I just look up and down. I'm out on DeJounte. I fucked up. I was in on DeJounte with the Hawks. He burned me so badly. I don't like his brand of basketball. I don't think it's conducive to winning. And I don't think it really fits what the Pelicans are doing here, especially if their starting 5 is going to include him and CJ McCollum, which it seems like it will. I don't understand that whatsoever. I think that's a stupid fucking coaching decision. And I think Willie Green, there were odds going around of who was going to be the first coach fired. I think Willie Green was second. I think he has a good chance of getting canned 2 months into the season. I really do. I wouldn't be that surprised if the Pelicans have a new coach by Christmas time. I'm worried about their small ball. I'm worried about Herb Jones is going to play center. He's a versatile defender, so he's got it. Don't worry, guys. Okay, cool. Every other team in the league is thanking you. The Mavericks are thanking you. You're putting Herb Jones on Derek Lively to take away the pick and roll threat. Thank you. Thank you for taking him off of Luka Doncic. We're putting him on Chet. The Thunder, thank you for taking him off of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. That can't be what they're doing. Zion cannot play 5. You're setting yourself up for disaster if Zion's playing extended minutes at the 5. He's going to get hurt. That's like a guarantee. Daniel Tice, that cannot be who you're relying on. Yves Missy cannot be who you're relying on. So there has to be a trade there. Brandon Ingram, I'm predicting it right now. I think this is what happens. Brandon Ingram, Ayton. I don't know what else happens. I don't know the other compensation involved. Brandon Ingram, Ayton, makes sense. Does that move me? I kind of like it. I kind of like it. But I don't know. This team just feels wonky to me. And look at some of these departures, man. Jonas Valanciunas, not only, Jonas Valanciunas, whatever. I don't think he's a center that you really think you can win a title with. But he's better than nothing. And not only that, Jonas Valanciunas is a fucking Iron Man. Like, pretty much nobody in the NBA has played as many games as Jonas Valanciunas over the last 4 or 5 years, center-wise at least. Dyson Daniels, interesting young guard who, in the context of this roster, kind of hard to find playing time for him, but interesting guard. Najee Marshall, they're going to miss. Larry Nance Jr., they're very much going to miss. I don't know. Yeah, and that is true. The small ball thing, the idea of small ball really works when you space the floor. And it's like what the Celtics can do, what the Thunder can do, what the Rockets were able to do, what the Warriors' death lineup was capable of achieving. We space the floor and we have a bunch of rangy defenders who can switch. The Pelicans' version of this small ball lineup is we're not spacing the floor and we have 2 guys who can switch and really play defense in that group. I don't see it. I don't fucking see it. I do not see it at all. I don't know. I feel like this could end up being a really strange year for the Pelicans. Just a really strange season. We'll see. But I have them under. I don't think it's a lock. You would think 43.5. I have them as a 12th seed. That sounds like a lock for them. They're under. You can't predict what the fuck this team's going to do. Zion can play 80 games and be first team All-NBA. And CJ McCollum quit 6th man of the year. And they just figure it out and win 52 games. I don't know. I really have no clue. But my heart tells me that this is not going to go well. I have the Clippers here at 11. I have put them and the Pelicans both at 42 wins. So I do have the Clippers over on their win total at 37.5. Never in a million years would I bet on it. Never in a million years would I suggest that you bet on it, just because why in the fuck would you do that to yourself? But looking at this team more and more, I do think they'll be good defensively. Just straight up good. Not just okay. I think they'll have a really, really solid defense, even if Kawhi does not play a lot of games. The Kawhi stuff is hilarious. Where it's just, Kawhi's not playing the preseason. We don't know if he's going to be ready opening night. It's so Team USA is dude, we don't want to deal with you. That knee is fucked up. He plays 2 games in the playoffs, looks awful. That's the last we've seen him. You just can't rely. And you guys know I'm as big of a Kawhi Leonard guy as anybody. It's just no chance in hell you can depend on him. But again, even if he doesn't play and misses a lot of time, there's still going to be a good defense. There's still going to be a good defense. That Harden and Zubac's pick and roll will be up there with some of the most efficient plays in the NBA. Harden will, if he's healthy, Harden will probably make an All-Star game. I'll just tell you right now. I think that's very, very possible that Harden makes an All-Star game. Kevin Porter Jr., in the game I watched, their preseason game against the Mavs, he did look pretty good. So I think they'll be frisky. I do. When we did their best and worst case scenario, I had 15th as their worst case scenario, 15th in the Western Conference. And I do think that's possible. If the Harden thing just blows up or he gets hurt, which he's been prone to injury over the back half of his career. Kawhi obviously misses a ton of time. Then their offense will be so bad. But I think their defense will be good enough to make games uncomfortable and then end up winning games. But it's just hard to pencil this team in as anything other than outside of the play-in tournament looking in. Slam shut their window. Slammed shut. Harden could do to get fat so he can get traded thing. I think Harden's cool with being here. I think he's content with that being where his career is. All right, now we're in the play-in tournament. We know all the teams. We know all the players. We're starting here with the team that I'm walking back on. Earlier in the offseason, I think I was just bored and trying things out, trying out takes. Over time, I've taken a step back a little tiny bit in my feelings for this team. That is the Los Angeles Lakers, who at times during the preseason, I was like, or the offseason, I was like, this team could be in the conference finals. They still could, right? LeBron and AD, I think, are still top 10 players in the NBA. So they still have that going for them. Those two were, by their standards, incredibly healthy last season. So I don't know how much you can rely on that moving forward, right? Like, I think odds are that those two miss more time than they did a season ago. But then you have some of these other role guys who missed a ton of time last season. Like Gabe Vincent barely played last year. I mean, he's an okay NBA player. Jared Vanderbilt barely played last season. He's an okay NBA player. Rui Hachimura, that guy's always injured, so I don't know how much you can rely on him. Like, they have some guys who were hurt for them last year who will be back. The JJ Redick piece. I mean, the new coach thing. We'll see how that goes. There's some psycho tendencies that it feels like JJ has that I think could point towards him being a good coach, but also it's the Lakers. It's a LeBron team. If the first month or two of the season go poorly, then it's going to be a fucking shit show. Lakers will three-peat as in-season tournament champs. Like, this could be a shit show. Lakers at 10 is crazy. You think that's too low? Is it? I mean, here's the thing: is there's inevitably going to be like 5 fan bases who feel like they're getting shafted in any rankings. That's just how the West is. JJ Redick will try to force a movement offense for shooters. Watch. Yeah, and that is something I'm concerned about as well. We talked about it with the Wizards, where it feels like Brian O'Keefe's wanting them to be like a space-to-floor team. They don't really have floor spacers. It feels like the Pelicans want to go this small ball route. They don't have what traditionally works in small ball. They don't have that roster construction. And yes, their depth is bad. I mean, LeBron gets injured. AD gets injured. God forbid those two both miss time at the same time. Then that team's fucking awful. Like, look at their roster, man. I know they won a game against the Celtics in Boston last year without those two, but that's not. That was a freak thing. That was a freak occurrence. I don't know. I want to like this team because LeBron is, in my opinion, the GOAT, and I do think it's better when he's on good basketball teams and competing for championships. I do think it'd be cool him being, 40 years old, competing at the highest level. I don't know, man. It would be very surprising if they're competing at that level this year. I do have them as an over, though, because I think this will be similar to last season where, like, you need 45 wins to be in the play-in tournament. Next is the Sacramento Kings. This was one of the hardest ones for me. This was one of the most difficult teams to try and figure out. This was one, I made this change literally as I was streaming. When we were starting the stream, I went in and I made this change. I had them 6th. I've knocked them down to 9. I don't know how I feel about them at all. This really is not fair to the Kings because I don't really give a fuck about preseason basketball. It's not fair that there's teams that I'm higher on who have also not won preseason games. The Kings, I think, are 0-4 in the preseason. The thing that concerns me with them is they're playing their guys like decent minutes in these preseason games, and they're not winning. They lost to the Jazz last night, playing their starters for the majority of the game or most of the game. My big concern with them, this was my concern with them in the offseason, and I've yet to see anything in the preseason that makes me feel better about it. In fact, it makes me feel worse. I'm worried about the three-point shooting. I am worried about the shooting on the team. I just am. I'm worried about it. And it's not like, oh, DeMar doesn't fit. It's just looking at their roster, where is the reliant and consistent shooting going to come from? You really need Keegan to develop into that guy. If you think they're a top 6 team, I think you're banking on Keegan taking a pretty big leap forward, which is definitely possible. Definitely possible. Yeah, Kevin Huerter having a return to form. I mean, this team in the final couple of months of the season was terrible from three. And it felt like this offense that the year before was the best offense in the NBA and just like lit teams up. It felt like offense became so difficult for them. So that is where DeMar is going to help out tremendously. And I keep trying to remind myself this is a regular season thing. I think the Kings' ceiling in the playoffs is next to non-existent just with this roster construction. Don't think you're going to win any like real competitive postseason series. But they should be a good regular season team. I'm just a little worried about them. Just a little bit worried about them. I think their defense, which was surprising last year, it was a league average to above league average defense. I don't know how replicable that is. If other teams in the West get better, if some of the teams that finished behind them defensively last season, teams like the Mavericks, who were much better in the second half of the season, end up being better defensively. I think that they're just currently just if they can get lucky, they can scrap a 7-game series and win in the first round. That's at best. I mean, the last time we saw them in the playoffs, they did take a Warriors team that I don't think was that great, but they did take a tough Warriors team that was experienced and had been there a bunch to 7 games. And it took a Steph Curry incredible 7-game performance to beat them. But their defense is reliant on Ellis and Murray. And I like both of those guys. I like Keon Ellis. I like Keegan Murray. But again, we're talking about an 82-game season, and this feels even extra cursed because I just went and looked at my YouTube studio right now, and we're at 666 views. So this feels cursed. Sorry to say. This feels cursed. Sorry, Kings. King. Bad news. All right, after I change things up, I actually don't know who's next. We're about to find out together. 8th is where I put the Warriors. Okay. Yeah, the Warriors are a very difficult team to predict as well. I think that they're still a good team, a solid team, a play-in tournament team. I could definitely see a world where they're outside the play-in tournament entirely. I could definitely see a world where they're the 6th seed, believe it or not. I do kind of like what they did in the offseason. Losing Clay, that was just things had gotten so sour there that those two had to separate. But, bringing in DeAnthony Melton, who was hurt for most of last season, he's a solid backup guard. Like, that's good depth to have. Buddy Hield, they're currently in love with Buddy Hield, man. Go look at any Warriors fan on Twitter. Go look at any of it. Go look at any of it, man. They are deep in the Buddy Hield. Deep in the Buddy Hield cycle right now, where they think this guy's going to fucking shoot 43% from 3 on 9 attempts a game. There's actually, believe it or not, and this is also, too, why I try to avoid Twitter during preseason, because what am I going to say? Like, be excited about your teams. I'm not going to shit on any fan base for being excited about their team. This is the time of the year where everyone should be excited about their team. I've seen Warriors fans who try to compare this team to the 2022 Warriors. Now, if that sounds like anything to you, if that makes you perk up, it's because that fucking team won the NBA Finals. So they are comparing this team to that team. They're setting themselves up for a disaster. They're setting themselves up for massive, massive disappointment. I do think like the 6th seed is the ceiling for this team. I cannot see an argument for them to be like really competing against some of the other top dogs in the West. It'd have to be Steph Curry is taking steroids and is not showing any signs of aging, right? Even though last year he already had performances and stretches where he was not shooting that well or as well as we're used to with Steph Curry. And this team is not built for that, right? You'd have to also be banking on Jonathan Kuminga finally taking that step and turning into, a reliable number 2 that can make like an all-star game. And yeah, jump into like a top 40 guy. Can Jonathan Kuminga do that? I've never really been that high on him. 19 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 54% from the field in 34 games before he suffered an injury. those are good numbers. Maybe you're banking on Podziemski taking a pretty big leap forward. It's possible, I guess. Kyle Anderson, I do like him off the bench. They do love Lindy Waters right now. They absolutely love Lindy Waters. I don't know. I think this will be a tough team. I think they'll have nights where Steph's really hot from three, or the team as a whole gets really hot from three, and they're pretty difficult to beat. But I don't know. I think there's too many things working against this team. And outside of that, I don't think they're that talented, especially outside of Steph. I don't think they're like that talented in a conference where the top end teams are very talented. But they're deep, though. That's what I've seen Warriors fans say. They're deep. They are deep. They are deep. They have like 10 to 11 playable NBA players, which in the regular season is nice to have. They were elite last year when Draymond played, especially at the end of the year. And that is true. They had stretches at last season, especially in the back half of the season, where they looked really good. So I don't want to poo-poo them too much. I'll also say this. They're very happy Klay Thompson's gone. I don't think it's a coincidence that Klay Thompson played some of his best basketball during that stretch of the season as well. Just saying. Just throwing that out there. Buddy Hield is very inconsistent, and you're going to be very frustrated by him at times. Just throwing that out there as well. But this is where I put the Warriors. I actually think 8th is, if there's any Warriors fans who are mad about this, I think this is very fair and high. Who did I put 7th? I had a spicy one. Okay. So you guys do know what this means. I have the Grizzlies at 7. I've been hesitant to be like super pro Grizzlies all off season. At least how some people are talking about them, that they could contend for the 1 seed. I don't really see that, to be honest with you. I do have them under on their win total, which is 47.5. I do think that they'll go under that number. I penciled them in. Well, I penciled them at 47 wins. So not too low, but there's no way the Grizz finish 7th. There's definitely a way the Grizz finish 7th. 1,000% away the Grizzlies finish 7th. Yes, they were the 2 seed in the 2 years before John Morant pretty much missed the whole season, and they had that season from hell last year. But that was a very, very different Western Conference, especially the Western Conference 2 years ago, where they were the 2 seed with 51 wins. That was a weak conference. That was a weak conference where a bunch of teams were injured. A bunch of teams had their season from hell. I don't feel like you can look at that and say, well, they're second in the conference that year. It's a very different league now. The league changes so incredibly fast. It is a very different league. I'm in on Zach Edey. I've been saying it all fucking offseason. I think he's winning Rookie of the Year. All offseason, I've been saying he's going to win Rookie of the Year. All of this post-up stuff with him is very, very cool. I think there's definitely matchups that will take advantage of it. Teams don't really post up that often, so I don't know what people are expecting if they're going to go to that all the time. If they do, that'll be really interesting. Like they're going to throw a new wrinkle in the league. But Zach Edey does look really good in preseason. I think he's going to have some moments where he looks really good. For me, it's not really the talent. This is a very talented team. John Morant's incredible. Desmond Bane's awesome. Jaren Jackson Jr. is awesome. Those are 3 top 50 players right there. They're all really good. Marcus Smart is getting up there in age, still really good. This team's already hurt. Like, they're already injured. They are already dealing with injuries. Jaren Jackson Jr. already dealing with an injury. Gigi Jackson dealing with an injury. Vince Williams Jr. dealing with an injury. Luke Kennard hurt his foot without a timetable for return. I didn't even know that. There you go. John Morant ended up not being anything. Did tweak his ankle in the game against the Mavericks. Like, I don't know. I'm banking on the health of this team. This team is unfortunately starting to turn into the Clippers, the Pelicans, where it would be really cool. Can they stay healthy, though? Can they stay healthy? And there is the Steven Adams thing. They were 6 points per 100 possessions worse with him off the floor when he was there. I mean, that's not nothing. That was over a 2-season sample size too. So, they have to get back to being a good 3-point shooting team as well. And if Kennard misses time, then they're really going to struggle from 3. I don't know. I think that they have the potential to be a good basketball team, but anyone like penciling them in as being back and being a top 5 seed no matter what, I think it's a little risky to assume that. I really do. So, of course, them being 7th means I do have the Rockets as a top 6 seed. I wanted to plant my flag on one team being surprising. The West could end up being really chalky. Who's to say? But I'm going for it. Fuck it. Why not? I have already just completely and totally contradicted myself with my best and worst case scenario stream. But that's okay. This roster is talented. And you know what? I'm in. Fuck it. Let's do it. Let's bank on it. Let's get there. They improved to 41 wins last year. At the start of the season, they looked like world beaters. They just couldn't win on the road. It was their big thing. Then they kind of tailed off a little bit. Then they had that stretch in March when they were going on that winning streak and they were pushing the Warriors. They were in the play-in race. They were winning all things considered, were pretty high-pressure games and high-stake games down the stretch of the season. And, of course, over that stretch, Jalen Green was going crazy. Now, do we fall into the Jalen Green March thing? Are we doing it? Are we falling for it? Are we falling for it? 2 Mavs legends departing, yes. Reggie Bullock and Boban. Best of luck, guys. Jalen Green's fool's gold every year. He's still so young, though, and he has so much talent and upside that I don't know. There could be a Jalen Green leap. And I don't. You know what? I'm fucking buying it. I'm going for it. I think Jalen Green solidifies himself as the guy in Houston this year. I don't know what that means for Şengün moving forward, but the Rockets are. I think they've over the past couple of years been a smart organization. They've drafted well. You look at the guys that they've drafted. They have drafted well. They've made good moves in free agency. They've made smart, signings, going out and getting Ime Udoka, obviously. I don't know what that means for Şengün. I'm sure they probably look at it and say, how far can we get if Şengün is our guy? Whereas Jalen Green is this uber athletic guard who's very skilled. And those are the players that really turn into big time players in the NBA. Shepherd will replace Green and they'll end up trading him. That's also a possibility. Reed Shepherd, we'll see. He looks to me like the best rookie. And if I were guaranteed Reed Shepherd plays 25 minutes a night or whatever, I would pick him to win Rookie of the Year. I just don't know if he's going to get that. Will Reed overtake Fred VanVleet as a starter? Not this season. No way this season. Fred VanVleet is still very good. Still a very good player. Amen Thompson, it's funny going into the draft, I was not really in on the Thompson twins, but since then I'm very fucking in on the Thompson twins. I'm so excited to watch Amen Thompson this upcoming season and see what he has in the tank, how he's improved as a player. Hopefully his role expands. Tari Eason's going to be back. He's a very good basketball player as well. He only played in 22 games last season. Could Jabari Smith take a little bit of a leap forward? Could we get Jabari Smith to like 38% from 3 this season? I like this team. I mean, look at this roster. This is a good team. Their over-under is 42.5 wins. I think they clear that. I think they clear that easily. I can't buy into players who can't shoot. Usually I would agree, and that's why going into the draft, I wasn't that in on Amen Thompson or the Thompson twins in general. But then you watch them play. Their athleticism is freakish. Like, it's like one of one almost. It is freakish athleticism. It's very good court feel, very good court vision. They're both good playmakers, and they are incredible defenders. Incredible defenders. So I think this would be a good defensive team. And if you get a consistent Jalen Green, or if you get another Şengün leap, I know we just kind of poo-pooed Şengün, but if Şengün could be around that all-star level he was last year, and maybe you see Jabari Smith Jr. take a leap, or Amen Thompson take a leap, or Reed Shepherd plays and is that guy, their offense will be better as well. Just imagine if we had Jabari or Tari. I love Tari Eason, dude. I fucking love him. I like this team quite a bit. Obviously, this is the team I'm planting my flag on this year. Let's go Rockets! Here we go, top 5. for me, I feel these 5 teams we're about to talk about feel kind of safe in that top 6, avoiding the play-in. But anything can happen, obviously, knock on glass. You could have injuries. You could have disappointing seasons. We've seen it before. I'm starting off here at 5th with the Suns. 50.5 wins. This feels, honest to God, in my heart, this feels like a lock for them to be under 50 wins. But I really can't bet against Jokic, so I wouldn't put it as a lock. I know, I said Nuggets. Did I say Suns? Okay, I meant to have the Nuggets here at 5. I'm growing more. I mean, I already was concerned about Jamal Murray, but I'm continuing to grow concerned about Jamal Murray. This is the Nuggets. What I meant to have the Nuggets here at 5. All right, the Nuggets are supposed to be here at 5. I'm sorry if I confused anybody. This is correct. What you're seeing on the screen is correct. I'm just worried about their depth. I mean, if I'm just worried about it. I mean, everyone is. There's really no point in harping on it more than anyone else has. I will say Julian Strawther looks really good, and that would be really good for them. Christian Brown has not shot the 3-ball well whatsoever so far this preseason. I think I saw, and this could be outdated already, but I think I saw he's only made 1 3 this preseason. That's concerning, dude. That's concerning to me. You know, I just don't know. I just don't know. You love Jokic. You never want to bet against Jokic. Jokic has such a high floor. If this were any other player in the league dealing with this roster, dealing with these amount of question marks, especially from your number 2 guy in Jamal Murray, I would have them in the play-in tournament probably, just being honest with you. But Jokic just raises their floor so high that I still think they're a top 5 seed, a very flawed top 5 seed, led by one of the greatest players in the history of the sport, Nikola Jokic. But, you know, if Jamal Murray kind of returns to form a little bit and over the back half of the season starts to look like the Jamal Murray we all know and love, maybe they find something finally from one of these guys they're begging to be good, whether that's Christian Brown, whether that's Strawther, whether that's Peyton Watson, or they go out and they make a move at the deadline to find somebody that they can consistently rely on, then they'll be a very, very scary team, and they'll be a team contending for the championship 100%. But, you know, somebody has to be 5th in this conference. It doesn't seem fair to the Nuggets, who won 57 games last year. It doesn't seem fair to a team that has a player who's won 3 MVPs in the last 4 seasons and has won a championship as recently as 2 years ago. But they got a lot of question marks, man. And as we get kind of closer to number 1, these teams start to have less and less question marks. And their question marks are big. They're fucking big. They're like the Riddler question marks in the Batman Arkham games when you're flying above the city and you see a ginormous ass question mark on the ceiling. That's what this feels like. Zach LaVine, I could not see Zach LaVine on this Nuggets team. Absolutely not. All right, at 4, I do have the Suns. I think they crushed their over. That's set at 47.5 wins. I think that they go over that pretty easily. I think that they push 50 wins, and they could be much better, I think, than a lot of people expect. Like if you were to travel to the future, come back and tell me that the Suns are contending for the 1 seed, that really wouldn't surprise me that much. They have their questions as well, obviously. Defensively, it was kind of surprising that they were 12th last year in defensive rating. But there's definitely a world where they go down defensively. They take steps backwards, right? Tyus Jones, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Yusuf Nurkic is not a very good defensive lineup. And that's problems that they will have in the postseason. But yes, Ryan Dunn God, you don't want to take too much into preseason, but the fact that that guy was supposed to be an offensive black hole, a horrible, just takes up space on offense, can't do anything, is a complete and total pumpkin, can't shoot threes, won't shoot threes, and then he comes into the preseason and is making as many threes in like 3 or 4 preseason games as he did his entire 2-year college career, is like enough to perk you up a little bit and say, okay, what the fuck are we doing here exactly? Because he's an incredible defensive player. And the reason why he went so low in the draft and the Suns were able to scoop him up is because, yes, everyone who watched him said that he was one of the best defensive guys coming out of the draft in a long time, but he was just so bad offensively that it was like he could be almost unplayable. And he has not looked like that in the preseason at all. And it is scary because that's the exact type of guy that they need. The exact type of guy. So that's just something to monitor moving forward. It's always health with these guys, obviously. Booker, even 68 games last year, 53, 68, 67. That's the number of games he's played. Bradley Beal, 53 games last year, 50 the year before that, 40, 60, 57. KD, 75 games last year was a healthy season from Kevin Durant, 47, 55, 35, 0. Nurkic, abnormally healthy season for him, 76 games last season, 52, 56, 37, 8 the seasons prior to that. So if they deal with injuries here and there, their depth is going to be tested, and their depth is not that great, although they have done a good job of sort of fleshing out their roster, considering the limited assets they had. Like, Plumlee's a more than capable backup big. Plum Dog millionaire. What year was that where he was making us a lot of money? There was a year where Plum Dog millionaire was still on the Hornets, and I'm guessing Mark Williams was hurt, of course, and Plumlee was the starting center. It was just racking up. I mean, just stuff in the stat sheet. And, like, prize picks and the other gambling apps hadn't really picked up yet. And we were just hammering Plumlee bets every single night. And he was hitting them like in the first half. Monte Morris would have been a fine addition by himself that I would have been excited about off the bench for them. I mean, getting Tyus Jones is nuts. The fact that they got a guy like Tyus Jones is absolutely crazy. This is going to be a great offensive team. I think they'll have, assuming that they have good health this year, or relatively good health for them, I think they have a pretty strong case to be the number one offense in the NBA. I think that that's something that they could do. This Budenholzer offense, just from preseason, the ball's flying around. They're shooting more threes. KD, Booker shooting more catch-and-shoot threes. Beal shooting more catch-and-shoot threes. I think it's going to be a really, really great offense. Their defense will be a problem, and those are things that'll affect them in the playoffs. We're talking about regular season stuff. Imagine a first-round series, if it goes like this. If I'm correct, imagine a first-round series, Suns-Nuggets. That's fucking fun. That's a fun first-round series. But we did say last year their defense would be terrible, and it was 12th. You know? Like, we did say all year last year the Suns' defense is terrible and will be terrible, and they were 12th. I'm high on this team. I really am. I like them. I think they're good. I think they're going to be a very difficult team to play. And they'll win a good amount of games this year. Again, assuming that they're healthy. Third's where I have the Mavericks. Now, before you guys say anything, I think this is totally fine. I think that this could be a repeat of last year where the top 3 seeds in the West are all upper to mid-50s in wins. And I do think that's the case. Their over-under is 50.5. I think that they smashed through that. I think they're a mid-50 win team this year. And I do think if some things go their way or if the Thunder kind of take a few steps back here or there, I do think the Mavs can contend for the 1 seed. Absolutely. I do think this is a Luka year. I don't want to spoil too much because on Friday we're doing our awards predictions, but it shouldn't come as much of a surprise. I do think this is the Luka MVP season, which therefore means I think the Dallas Mavericks are going to be winning a lot of games. The thing with them, similar with the Suns, similar with some of the other teams we talked about, the Grizzlies, there's a health concern with the Mavericks, right? Kyrie missed time last year. Didn't get to that 65-game mark. How many games did Kyrie Irving play total last year? It's kind of hard to remember it because he missed such a large stretch at the start of the season that you don't really remember how many games he missed. But 58 games last year. 58 games last year. The red icon is injured. That's a little hospital. So Dante Exum's in the hospital right now. You do run the risk, and there are concerns that Kyrie Irving misses time. Luka played 70 games last year. That was the second most he's played in his career in a season. So you can bank on Luka missing at least 10 games in a season. Kyrie Irving's probably going to miss, 15 to 20 games at least in a season. Knock on glass, obviously, but that's just the reality of the situation. But here's the thing. The Mavericks are much, much better equipped to deal with those type of things this season. This is the deepest roster they've had in the Luka era. It is probably the most talented roster that they've had in the Luka era. Going out and getting a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie, who, yes, has looked shitty so far this season. I have, I guess they teased this so I can say it, but I was doing a preseason preview with Ben and Skin a couple nights ago. That thing's coming out on Monday, they said. But Skin made such a good point and made such a good analogy that Spencer Dinwiddie's like the middle relief pitcher in baseball that gets you 3 or 4 innings every now and then. Not going to pitch every day, but when you really need him in a crunch, you can go to him and he's kind of reliable. I think that's a great way to view Spencer Dinwiddie. I've been telling you guys all offseason that Spencer Dinwiddie hasn't been good in a year and a half, and I don't think he's going to have a huge role in this Mavericks team. But the reason you go out and get a guy like that is he has proven throughout his career, and especially his time in Dallas, that, hey, if needed, I can be a break in case of emergency type of guy. Jaden Hardy, I think, I don't really know what his future holds on this team, but he's shown some flashes in the postseason last year. He's shown some flashes in the preseason. Quentin Grimes has looked really good in the preseason. I know that he's an inconsistent player. People on fucking. I tweet out during a game. This is why I try to avoid Twitter because, yes, everyone's annoying during the preseason. Of course, every fan base is fucking annoying during the preseason because every fan base thinks they're going to be good. Okay, so yes, of course, Quentin Grimes does things. I'm tweeting out, hell yeah, let's go, Quentin Grimes. People are Knicks fans. For some reason, somehow, Knicks fans flock to the tweet. And they're like, are you a fucking idiot? Quentin Grimes is not this good. Quentin Grimes is not going to do this. It's like, dude, Quentin Grimes is going to be the 9th best player on this team. Like, I'm not expecting anything. It's just the flashes are nice. I know. I've watched Quentin Grimes with the Knicks. I know he's an inconsistent player. I'm aware of that. He's replacing an inconsistent player in Josh Green. And his flashes are higher. His flashes are higher than Josh Green's were. Okay? So that's like, Jesus Christ. That's why I try, because it's stupid to like get mad at fans for being hyped during the preseason. I made a tweet about, I know who you're specifically talking about. I'm not talking about any one person specifically. I got a lot of Knicks people. I was like, dude, I didn't even say anything crazy. Obviously, they go out and they get Klay Thompson. I think this will help this team out tremendously. This floor spacing, the shooter. Yes, Klay just had an 0 of 9 game in the preseason, which any bad Klay Thompson game, guys, it's pull up, get the boots on, lace them up. We need to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps because it's going to be tough. We're going to be in the trenches fighting for our fucking lives defending Klay Thompson, but it is what it is. PJ Washington looked great. I think PJ Washington's going to have a really good season. I really do. A full offseason with this Mavericks team. And he's also, it's not like PJ Washington's 32 years old. He's 25, 26. He's still getting better as a player. This is the first time in his career he's been in a winning environment. Looked really good in the playoffs. Was a big reason why the Mavericks made the finals run that they did. And now he has a full offseason with the team. I think he's going to have a really good season. Najee Marshall, I'm so excited about. I think he's going to help this team out tremendously. These two guys, whatever. But Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, one of the best centered tandems in the NBA. It's a lot to be excited about, man. It really is a lot to be excited about. I think it's going to be a good basketball team. I think they're going to be a good defensive team. I think their offense could be the best in the NBA. And I know I've said that about a couple teams, but there's a few teams that are in contention for having the best offense in the NBA. Have you noticed they're playing Dwight at the 4? I wouldn't take anything away from any. I honestly, God, will not take a single thing away from any lineup thing you've seen in this preseason, especially for the Mavericks. If the Pels came calling for Gaff, would you pull the trigger for a forward? Are you saying like Trey Murphy for Daniel Gafford? Fuck yes. Are you joking? I was actually thinking about that. I was thinking with the Knicks more specifically, but those teams that are like kind of going to be desperate for center help, and it's not the Knicks anymore since they went and got Cat, but before that, where I was like, I wonder how like safe Gafford is here. If one of those teams became so desperate for a big that they're knocking on the Mavs' door about Daniel Gafford, I wonder what the price would be. I wonder what the price would be. Now, I'm not saying Trey Murphy for Gafford is realistic. I don't think it is, but you never know. All right, so I have the Mavs finishing third. But again, this isn't like they'll win 49 games. I think that they're a mid-50 win team. I think these top three teams in the West are going to be really, really good. I do have the Timberwolves at second. I have flip-flopped. This is why I try not to be super reactionary about things, because I just feel one thing in the moment and then another thing outside of the moment. But I'm starting to really warm up to this trade. And I'm not sure if it's, it's just over time. The way my brain works is I have an initial take, an initial thought, and then I try to talk myself out of that initial take and initial thought. So sometimes I flip-flop entirely because that's just how I approach things, I guess. Or I don't know if it's because the preseason Dante DiVincenzo looks fucking incredible. You predicted over, but record under 50.5. Wait, what? No, I had Dallas over 50.5 wins. Oh, this, are you talking about this? This is the top number is their record from last year. If that's what you're looking at. They were 50-32 last year. I love this Dante DiVincenzo addition for them. Ant was legit sad when Cat got traded. Yeah, but I do think that was the weirdest part about the trade for me, was that it happened 2 days before media day. Like, we dragged out the entire offseason. Karl-Anthony Towns is such a focal point of your franchise. He's been a cornerstone of your franchise for 10 years. I mean, 10 years is so long in the NBA. It is so fucking long. And you trade him 2 days before media day, coming off of, if not the best season in your franchise's history, the second best season in your franchise's history. That was the shocking thing about it. But yes, I'm Dante DiVincenzo is going to fit like a glove, I think, on this team. It's going to be a really interesting backcourt mate with Anthony Edwards, and those two share the floor together. Because I'm assuming Mike Conley's still going to start, obviously, and play a good amount of minutes. Rob Dillingham, we'll see. It's tough to rely on rookie guards, especially small guards like this, but Terrence Shannon Jr., a lot of people are really excited about him. Julius Randle, I mean, I think he is playing in the preseason. I think I saw. Maybe I'm misremembering their last preseason game, but Julius Randle is the interesting one. Yes, that's the wild card. That is the wild card. Could go a couple of different directions. The thing is, though, is I don't think it kills them if it goes bad. Like the Cat thing with the Knicks. I don't think it'll go bad. I think the Cat thing will go very well. But if it for some reason does go bad, that really hurts them. Julius Randle, if it doesn't really work out for the Timberwolves, I'm not sure that really hurts them that much. In fact, it might be kind of a blessing in disguise, because that means they can just plug Naz Reid into their starting five, and I think that just works better with everything that they have going on personally. But I get why they would just start the season with Julius Randle there at least. But I like the playmaking and self-creation from DiVincenzo. I think it'll really help out next to Anthony Edwards. Just the volume three-point shooting will help out tremendously. They'll still be an incredible defense. I don't know if they'll be as good as they were last year, but they'll still be an incredible defense. I've mentioned this number before, but the Randle stuff. When Anthony Edwards was on the court, the Timberwolves had a 121 offensive rating when it was Anthony Edwards and Cat. So just that floor spacing. Ant is so much better when the floor is spaced. Anthony Edwards without Karl-Anthony Towns on the court, a 113 offensive rating. So it tanks. It's not that much of a surprise. Cat's an incredible offensive player, spaces the floor, knocks down threes, all of this. But Julius Randle and Gobert kind of clogs things up in a weird way. especially if Jaden McDaniels is out there too. Like, Jaden McDaniels really isn't that much of a shooting threat. It'll be interesting. But I still think this team's going to be really, really good. 51.5 just feels way too low. I mean, I'm smashing that over. I mean, this is supposed to be a lock. I don't know why it's not highlighted. This is a lock for me. No way Wolves are better than the Mavs. They could be. No way the Wolves will be better than the Mavs this season. I mean, why not? I want to hear specifically why not. I want to hear specifically. Is there a reason other than I like the Dallas Mavericks? Can you give me a reason other than, like, you want to say the Mavs will be better? That's fine. No way. Because they beat them in the Western Conference Finals. That is true. We're talking about a full regular season, though. Wolves' best player doesn't do what the Mavs' best player does. Spacing the defense with Dillingham off the bench. Luka will never win MVP if Ant and Shea are above them in the seeding. That's not true. I think if the scenario I have predicted here, and yes, I do have the Thunder here as the 1 seed. You'll notice, though, I have their under on wins, 57.5. It was funny listening to the Bill Simmons podcast, and they were all like, over. This is a 60-win team. I think the West is so fucking hard. It's really hard for me to imagine a 60-win team. If the Thunder knock out 60 wins, I'll be very concerned. Well, let's say the Thunder are the 1 seed in the West with like 56 wins. The Timberwolves have 55, and the Mavericks have 54. Luka's winning MVP. Because the Thunder can be the 1 seed and have like a relatively disappointing regular season, if that makes sense. Like, if the Thunder win the West, are the 1 seed with 56 wins, you kind of did what you were supposed to do. So anyways, I do have the Thunder here. God, people get so angry at me whenever I say the Thunder are good. What the fuck do you guys expect me to say? They were the 1 seed a season ago. We're not talking about a team that was 7th in the West last year, and now we're all kind of like, well, they made that, like, they're going to be the 1 seed. They did this, like, they're going to be the 1 seed. They're unproven, but they're going to be the 1 seed. Like, they're the 1 seed a season ago, and they got better. Like, they got better without getting worse. I'm sorry. They're fucking stacked. Their team is really, really good. Their team is really good. Great graphics, light bias, looking highly professional. Shout out Melverick in the chat, the community member. He made these. Melverick did. They're an incredible team. People are angry because they hate the Thunder fan base. No way they're finishing below the 2 seed. Yes. Yeah, whenever I did my best worst case scenarios and I tweeted it out, there was a lot of people who were like, dude, the Thunder could be 5th, because I had the Thunder's best case scenario 1, their worst case scenario 2. Who were like, dude, they could finish 5th. It's like, how? Outside of a doomsday ass scenario, how? Now, I will say, I've seen a lot of, they were an incredibly healthy team last year, and yeah, they probably won't have the same injury luck last year. It's just really hard to replicate that. Everyone's like, well, they have a bunch of durable superstars. Shea did have a stretch in his career where he was missing a lot of time, and a lot of that did have to do with the Thunder just kind of strategically tanking and shutting Shea down. But yes, if Shea, knock on glass, has to miss an extended period of time, they're still deep, but they don't have like the guy, I think, that can really take over games and lead an offense that will help them be like a mid-50 win team, right? But outside of that, though, they're an incredibly deep team. They'll be incredible defensively. They'll be incredible offensively. They really could finish the season as the best offense and the best defense in the league. I think it's them and the Celtics are the only 2 teams that I think could do that. It's a very rare thing. It like never happens, but it could happen. That's how loaded they are. They're going to be very difficult to score on. They have a lot of length. They're very switchable defensively. They have so much versatility defensively. Even what they can do with their bigs, where they can have Chet out there by himself if there's not like a bruiser center. and Chet can just sort of roam around and block shots. Or they could pair Chet and Hartenstein together. And you have two mobile bigs who are very good rim protectors, but also can move around on the perimeter and switch. Their wing defenders, the options that they have. J-Dub. J-Dub played great defense on Kyrie in the playoffs. He's a very, very good defender. Lou Dort, good defender. He is a good defender. I know he's annoying as fuck, but he's a good defender. Caruso, maybe the best perimeter defender in the sport. Cason Wallace, a very good defender. If Shea is like your fifth or sixth best defender, you're doing very good. Shea's a good defender as well. Like they're loaded, dude. They're a great team. They're very well coached. They're young, which usually means they're more durable than other teams, and they're more ready to go for an 82-game season. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that I wrote down. I fully expect this team to be the 1 seed. The thing is, I don't know what they can show me in the regular season that'll answer any questions I have for them. What do I mean by this? I think that they're going to be a great regular season team. What they need to have happen for them to really take that leap forward and become that team, J-Dub, Chet, one of those two, or both, have to show playoff time, I'm ready to go. 20 points per game, efficient. I can handle the rock. I can do things next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander so he doesn't have to carry our offense. Like, I'm ready to go as a number 2 option. Because last year, Jalen Williams, 17 points per game, 42% from the field against the Mavericks. That was 2 points per game less than he scored in the regular season. That was 12 percentage points worse from the field than he was in the regular season. Chet, 16 points per game on 22% from 3 against the Mavericks. Those two just kind of failed Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They completely failed him. Shai was awesome in that series, was awesome in the playoffs, but they just didn't have a number 2. So we shall see. And yeah, there's some playmaking stuff that is a bit of a concern with Giddey gone, but Giddey was unplayable by the playoffs. And anyone who was watching this team with any regularity last season told you that was going to happen. Giddey was not somebody. I had arguments with friends in my life who are Thunder fans where I was like, Giddey is not going to be able to play games in the playoffs the way the teams play them. It's just not possible. I really don't think Giddey's that big of a loss in the regular season, honestly. Like big loss. Good on SGA playing a Luka at 60 to 70% capacity. Okay, Luka was. Shai. Yes, Luka was hurt in that series. Shai was incredible in that series. I mean, he was. Like, why do we have to pretend he wasn't? Shai was really fucking good. Shai's a really good basketball player. He's probably the 4th best player in the NBA currently. This team is good. This team is really, really good. I think they'll finish first in the West. I'd be surprised if they get to 60 wins, but you never know. I have Shai over Embiid, yes. I wouldn't say he outplayed him. I mean, Luka was hurt in that series. Shai played better in that series than Luka. Okay? He just did. Luka won the fucking series. Luka's last 2 games of that series were incredible. What Luka did in game 5 of that series on the road in OKC and what was a win, a must-win type of game, completely and totally neutralized that crowd. I was there. I was in attendance. The moment tip-off happened, a compromised Luka Doncic took complete and total fucking control of that game, and it was never in question. So it was incredible. But over the course of the series, Shai was a little bit better. That's just true. Yes, the idea is J-Dub, who, by the way, J-Dub is a very good playmaker. He is a very good playmaker. It was his first postseason, and the lights were a little bit bright, and he wasn't as good as he needed to be. That happens a lot. It's funny how defensive people get with the Thunder. They're good. It's okay to say they're good. And guess what? Saying the Thunder are really good makes what the Mavericks did last year much more impressive, which it was. I've never understood this. I really have never understood this. Celtics fans have done this all offseason. Well, the Mavericks actually sucked. Wouldn't it make more sense for you to be like, no, they're actually really good? Because it makes what you did more impressive. Like, hey, guys, the Timberwolves were a really fucking good basketball team last year. That's why it makes what the Mavericks did that much more impressive. The Thunder were a great basketball team last year and are a great basketball team. That's what makes what the Mavericks did so much more impressive. Sally, do you get annoyed though how Bill talks about that series, or do you think he's not that off? I do. I don't think that series was as close as he makes it out to be. Oh, if one shot goes here or there, I don't think that's true. I think after game one, the Mavericks completely controlled that series. Completely controlled it. People just see you constantly praising as glazing. That's why there's a pushback. They want you to say the Mavs are better. In terms of regular season and in terms of roster construction, this Thunder team is better than the Mavericks. Okay? They are. Playoffs are a different fucking thing entirely. We're doing a regular season ranking. Playoffs are a different beast. Yeah, after game one, the only game the Mavericks lost in that series was a game where they diarrheaed on the court. If OKC is so good and Kyrie sucked and Luka got outplayed, how did OKC lose? Kyrie did not suck in that series. I've said this, and I defended Kyrie in the series. His numbers were not great. He was getting hard doubled. I thought he was a very good playmaker in that series, and he did exactly what the game dictated that he did. He was bad in the series against the Celtics. I thought he was good in the Thunder series. I thought he played good defense, and I thought he played within the flow of the offense and just took advantage of what was given to him. I thought Kyrie was good in that series. I thought Luka was. I mean, when we say Luka, you have to understand who we're talking about here as a player. We're talking about an all-time great entering his prime, probably not even in his prime yet. So when we say Luka was below standards for Luka, we're not saying Luka was a horrendous player. Still a fucking incredible player. But the Mavericks rolled, guys. I mean, the Mavericks took advantage. It was a bad matchup for the Thunder in the postseason. You could be a better team, have a deeper roster, and still have matchup problems with teams. Would you ever say that the Mavericks are a worse team than the Kings? No. But for the longest time, the Kings gave the Mavericks, even when the Kings weren't good, but with how fast they played, gave the Mavericks nightmares. Just a very difficult match. For whatever reason, it was a matchup that wasn't good. The Raptors last year. Remember that game? That was just, for where the Mavericks were as a team at the time, was a very, very difficult matchup. Not a better team, but a bad matchup. Pacers, yes. The Pacers. 2007 Warriors is a great one as well. You're right. All right, so just a recap here. I have the Thunder finishing first in the Western Conference, followed by the Timberwolves at second, the Mavericks at third. I'm locking in their over. I also think the Timberwolves over is a lock as well. Suns fourth. I think their over is a lock. I think they're going to be a very good basketball team this upcoming season. I think their offense is going to be electric. I have the Denver Nuggets at fifth. Just too many question marks, right? Jokic is incredible. That's why I have them fifth. Otherwise, they'd be a little bit lower. Just Jokic is an incredible floor raiser, and he's going to be amazing yet again. I just worry about Jamal Murray. I worry about Christian Brown shooting threes. I worry about Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, these guys sort of stepping in, Russell Westbrook stepping in and being big-time contributors, Dario Saric. Just too many question marks for me to be super high on them in a conference that I think is going to be incredible. Rockets at six. This is my big one. I'm putting them in the top six. They're a young team. They showed huge flashes of improvement last year. Why does it stop there? Why do they just plateau right there? I think that they continue to improve, and I think that they make a top six seed. Grizzlies at seven, not as high as them as others. Their injury stuff is already concerning me. The Warriors at eight, I think this is a good outcome for them. They made some pretty good offseason moves. They're a pretty deep team, but it's a wide puddle. It's not a super deep puddle. Does that make sense? They have a bunch of guys, but I don't know how great a lot of them are. The Kings at nine, I worry about them. I worry about their offense. I worry about their floor spacing. This game is becoming so dependent on threes. I'm worried that they're not going to shoot the volume of threes they need to, and I'm worried they're not going to be efficient from three as well. The Lakers at 10, I was high on them in the offseason. I have collapsed in on them. They're just not that talented of a team outside of LeBron and AD. That's just the reality. Clippers at 11. I think that they're going to be feisty. I think they're going to be a little bit more frisky than people expect. I think their defense will be annoying as fuck on a night in and night out basis. The Pelicans at 12. Somebody's going to have a disaster season. Knock on glass and pray it isn't your team. This is how it works. This happened to the Grizzlies last year. It happened to the Mavericks 2 years ago. There's always a team. There's 12 teams. I think that they're going to be in the play-in tournament. It feels right now like that's probably going to be the Pelicans. The Spurs at 13. 35.5 wins is their win total. I'm going under, and I think that's a lock. They're scary to me. They're scary in a positive way that I think we see signs of progression for them that line them up for 2025, 2026 to be an interesting season, but I don't think they're going to be that good this year. Jazz at 14. I think this is a season that they really try to tank, and the Portland Trail Blazers because somebody has to lose.